Oh boy, let's see what's new on Twitter.com. What the actual fuck is this? People being angry over a cheap jab I made at a piece of popular media? And others are supporting them? How? How could these people be so inconceivably mean on the internet? Woe is me. Life is not worth living anymore. There's only one way out of this hell. Goodbye, world.
Seriously though, just because someone makes a cheap jab at something you like doesn't automatically mean they hate it or they think it's bad. So just calm down, buddy. Just calm down. So me and my buddies, Bort Jameson and Max Meister, we love us some movies. We're a band of jolly old cinema enthusiasts, we are. And like most movie enthusiasts with actual taste in cinema, we don't care for most, if not all, productions. I can't bring myself to call these actual movies, are you fucking kidding me? That managed to seep out of that cinematic bowel system we like to call Happy Madison Studios. Or anything involving its founder, Mr. Adam Richard Sandler. In fact, the only Adam Sandler movies the three of us can agree on without argument are the same two everyone else on this fucking green earth agrees on. Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore. And Punch Drunk Love.
That's 3 movies.
So when J-Dubs called me one day and said, hey, let's all get together, go see that Uncut Gems movie with Adam Sandler, I immediately insisted that we're better off watching Final Fantasy Advent Children. Again. For those of you who don't watch movies and essentially live under fucking rocks, Uncut Gems is a movie by the Safety? It's a movie by the Safety brothers about a New York jeweler with a gambling addiction. He runs around town, he's betting a metric shit ton of borrowed money, and he risks everything including his life to pay it all back with the high wire act of a lifetime. The Super Safety brothers are also known for pieces such as Good Time, Heaven Knows What, and actually that's pretty much it. Everything else they've made is either just kind of meh or some kind of artsy short film. But these two were good at least. So when I first caught word they were making another movie, I was pretty excited about it. Even more excited when the first trailers dropped on YouTube. And this is a very big but. When I saw that our main character was being played by Mr.
Funny
Man Adam Sandler, my heart fucking sank. I hate this man's overall filmography so fucking much that the sheer thought of him trying his luck in a serious role in a serious film with heavy tones of deception and high-stake bets immediately convinced me that a poorly dubbed Japanese animated movie from 2005 with a main protagonist who reacts to his arch enemy's resurrection like this
Sephiroth, what do you want?
was somehow still going to be better, regardless of the change in studio. Yeah, this ain't no Happy Madison production, folks. Sandler's got no liberties this time. He's at the mercy of the Super Safety Dance bros now.
Bad touch! Bad touch!
But was that enough to whip him into suitable shape for the role he was undertaking? Well, despite my better judgment, I still met up with the boys, and we watched the hell out of Uncut Gems. And something terrible, possibly horrible, maybe even downright inconceivable happened. I accidentally really liked it. But that's not to say it's without flaw. Believe you me, there are things I don't care for in this movie. From certain audio mixing, to some of the pacing, to even the videography itself. But one thing at a time. Let's start with the plot. The film starts off in 2010 at an Ethiopian mining site, where a band of workers are rushing an injured man to fresh air. Meanwhile, 2 other workers deep in a cave find a massive chunk of what's known as black opal. I'm no gem buff, but the name alone makes it sound like a pretty fucking big deal. Kinda sounds like the equivalent of finding like netherite in Minecraft. We then get a trippy title sequence with equally and deliciously trippy synth music that transitions into a colonoscopy. Okay. Fast forward to 2012, where we follow Howard Ratner, played by Adam Sandler, as he walks to his jewelry shop in Diamond District, New York. As he walks in, we see a man named Phil, played by Keith Williams Richards, paying our gem merchant a visit, complete with a slap to the face.
What I tell you? I said no.
And a reminder that he owes money to his brother-in-law, establishing 2 of our main antagonists extremely early on. Like, really early. We're not even 10 minutes into this 2-hour movie. It's established that quickly. Howard then ducks out of his shop and heads for his spare apartment to visit his girlfriend Julia, played by Julia De Fiore. And whether that name be coincidence or intentional design, I will leave up to the imagination. Now I say he's visiting, but really he's ducking in to tell her to get off her lazy ass cause she's late for work. Oh yeah, she also works at the gem shop. Cut back to Howard in his shop when his main advertiser Damani, played by Lakeith Stanfield, walks in with Boston Celtics player Kevin Garnett, played by the real Kevin Garnett. Not sure what I expected. Our boy KG's in the market for a very certain watch Damani showed him on the streets. A very certain watch Howard says he doesn't even have, but it kinda seems like he does, and just doesn't want to sell one. For some reason. Damani pulls Howard aside and calls him out for his lack of transparency with him, when a mailman comes in to deliver Howard's monthly Manco munitions crate, which he takes into his office and opens up like a wee boy on Christmas. Or Hanukkah in this case. You know, since he and the actor playing him are both Jewish. Anyway, he opens up the crate to find it's full of holy mackerels, one of which he digs into until he fishes out a pretty black box containing the black opal from the beginning of the film. He nuts. Howard brings the black materia out to show it off to KG and Damani, telling them it's worth $3,000 per carat for a 5,000 carat rock. In other words, it's really fucking valuable. It's also pretty powerful too. In fact, so powerful it immediately possesses KG, forcing him to see his life flash before his eyes with subliminal messages telling him to deliver the black materia to the northern crater. But before Sephiroth can take full control, KG breaks the display glass and begs Howard to sell the rock to him. Howard rejects his offer as he already has plans to auction it off, putting KG and Damani in a bit of a fuss. For some reason, Howard agrees to lend the materia for a day in exchange for KG's high school ring. And like a respectable man of his word, he puts this ring in a secure place where no harm can come to it. Just kidding, he immediately pawns it off for $21,000. Meanwhile, Phil and his buddy Nico, played by Tommy Komanek, are sitting back and following our boy through the streets for Arno. Howard walks into a restaurant to meet up with a bet placer, or a beard as known in betting terminology, named Gary, played by Mike Francesa. Howard tells Gary to place all of his money on the Boston Celtics. Gary tells Howard that this is a dumb bet, but he disagrees and leaves. Cut to Howard at home watching the game when his wife Dina, played by Adina Menzel, tells him to say goodnight to his youngest son. Though it does take a bit of coercing to actually get him to do it. Now, you would think all that would mean is just, popping your head into the door and just saying, good night and the sweet dreams and all that good jazz, right? But for some reason, he just lays on the bedroom floor and watches the game on his phone. And before you ask, your guess is as good as mine. Howard takes a taxi to his apartment when he sees the Celtics won the game, meaning Howard just won a lot of money. He nuts. He arrives at the apartment and hides in the closet, waiting for Julia to surprise her. She eventually does get back and Howard starts texting her from the closet, with his phone volume up all the way. She's barely 6 feet away from the closet. She should be able to hear him typing away asking for nudie pics. Howard eventually does pop out to surprise Julia and tells her the good news. Then they embrace in some celebratory coitus. He nuts. The next day, Howard is waiting for Damani in a hotel, so he can give the auction people the damn 4th Chaos Emerald for appraisal. When Damani does eventually show up, he tells Howard that KG still has it. Howard then essentially forces Damani to drive him to Philadelphia to get it back. But when they finally get to the YMCA, Howard makes a fool of himself, and Damani ditches him. Cut to Howard at his daughter's play when he turns his head to see Phil spying on him with his other pal Buddy, played by Louis Anthony Arias. He calls them out on this and they take it to the hallway, where Howard smacks Phil and bites Buddy, then makes a break for his car where he's intercepted by a van, then tackled to the ground by Phil and Buddy. Howard is thrown into the van where he's finally confronted in person by Arno, played by Eric Bogosian. Arno calls out his brother-in-law for taking money he's owed and betting it all over town, even telling him how he canceled the Celtics bet, unknowingly fucking himself out of said money. Howard lets him know this, and in turn, Arno has Phil and Nico strip Howard down to bare skin and then has them throw him into the trunk of his own car. Not that it's that much of an issue, because Howard just calls Dina to get him out. And I feel like this is as good a time as any to bring this up, but in most of the scenes she's in, Idina Menzel's jaw is either jutted forward or ever so slightly ajar. Kinda like Bale in the Dark Knight movies, come to think of it. We then see Howard checking his injuries in the mirror when he calls Damani, who tells him he finally has the Millennium Puzzle. Howard instructs him to meet up at the weekend concert, but when he gets there it turns out Damani doesn't even have it, like he said he did. So he just blatantly lies to his boss for no fucking reason. To make matters worse, Howard spots Julia playing groupie to the weekend. Cut to Julia and the weekend doing coke in the bathroom when Howard pulls him out and beats his ass.
Billy Madison jumps a motherfucking starboy.
Howard then calls it off with Julia, kicks her out of his apartment, and gets a taxi to a shop where he crashes in his office. This is one of two scenes that tries to make us feel bad about our gem merchant. But he's an asshole, so it's not really easy to sympathize with him. The next day, supposedly right after closing time, we see Howard bickering with the auction manager over the phone about getting the black materia to them for appraisal 3 days before the auction. Speaking of which, KG and Damani come back round with the gem and 175k. But not only does Howard decline the cash again and tells KG to attend the auction if he wants it so damn badly, but he completely forgot that he pawned the Celtic ring off and tells KG that he left it at home or something. For some reason, KG gives back the opal anyway, and after reclaiming the Infinity Stone, Howard leaves the shop and makes a break for his family Passover dinner. But Julia intercepts him on the way to the elevator. Our absolute fucking Chad Howard over here is not having any of it, however, and he shoves her aside and even knocks the fucking thought juice right out of her grasp. Real power move, especially in this day and age. We then see an awkward Passover dinner with Howard and Arno sitting right across from each other. Most likely to add extra tension and to remind the audience that they're siblings-in-law. You know, just in case you've forgotten all the fucking mayhem. Later we see Howard trying to appeal to Dina, asking for a second chance and whatnot. And like a normal human being with even an iota of sense, she declines and calls him annoying. A rather apt description for most of Sandler's performances and roles. The Radner bunch drive home when Howard decides to drop by his apartment to see if Julia is actually gone. But the oldest son, I forgot his name a while ago, has to piss. So he follows Howard inside and uses a neighbor's bathroom. And on a side note, the neighbor kind of looks just a wee bit like a fat Fonzie. After Howard confirms Julia's departure and completely ignores his son's questions about the woman living in his apartment,
Julia.
we get the second scene that tries to make the audience feel bad for Howard. But again, Howard's a complete and total asshole. He's not even like Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man or Marvin and Chef either. He's just an irredeemable asshat who deceives customers, his employees, his commandants, even his own family for personal gain. There's nothing to really show sympathy for in Howard, other than he's a human being with feelings. But that's not enough to feel bad for him. So these scenes just feel a little, I don't know, phoned in and forced. Cut to 3 days later on auction day, Howard shows up to the hotel lobby to find out that his expected estimate for $1 million plus for that damn fourth Chaos Emerald has been reduced to $155,000. Understandably, Howard is a tad bit upset and asks the receptionist politely to get the auction manager on the blower. She does this on the one condition that Howard doesn't start yelling. So naturally, Howard starts yelling immediately after getting the phone, demanding that the manager raises the price on the appraisal. She refuses and tells Howard that's all they can fork up, since they only had a weekend to evaluate it. This forces our boy to cook up a scheme to convince his father-in-law, Gooey, played by Judd Hirsch, to participate in the auction and directly compete with KG to bump up the value to at least $200K. Gooey reluctantly agrees, and to make an 8-page summary just a little bit shorter, it backfires and Gooey ends up paying $195,000 for Dwayne Johnson. Somehow, Howard convinces Gooey to give him back the wishing rock on the most likely false promise that he'll just give back whatever just went into his account. Phil and Arno show up to jab Howard in the throat and leave. Howard tries pursuing them, but Phil gives him a pop in the nose, complemented with a very painful sounding effect, and tosses him in the fountain. We then see Howard entering a shop just to close it down early, telling everyone except one other lady, I forgot her name too, to take the rest of the day off. Julia comes into Howard's office to try to apologize by showing him her new ass tattoo. But before he can take it all in, he gets a call from KG telling him he still wants the black materia. And this turns Howard's frown right upside down. I actually typed that, and I'm already sorry for it. Howard then rushes to the pawn shop from the beginning of the movie to trade his Cracker Jack ring for KG's high school ring. Shortly after, KG shows up with $165K and they finally make the big trade. But KG's not oblivious to Howard's mind games, and he calls him out on it. Howard pretty much indirectly admits that he has a gambling addiction, explaining to KG that high-risk, high-reward bets are, as he puts it, how he wins. KG calls him nuts, takes the crystal skull and ring, and gets the fuck out of Dodge before he's late for his next game, which is like in an hour. Shortly after, Arno and co visit Howard's shop, but Howard manages to get a text out to Julia to go to the next door window before they start knocking on his office door. She obliges and Howard passes over the money, instructing her to bet it all on the Celtics game. Right after he sits back at his desk, Arno and company storm Howard's office and demand the money they're owed. Howard stalls for as long as he can, but one of them checks his computer monitors to find a transaction for a helicopter ride to the Mohegan Sun. So Phil sends Buddy there to find Julia and reclaim the money. In the meantime, he forces Howard to dial Julia and tell her to come back. Well, he tries to. Howard refuses his demands, and instead of beating him within an inch of his life for simply looting the store of valuables to make up for the lost money, they just call him a moron and take their leave. To go rendezvous with Buddy? If I had to guess. But Howard manages to trap the loan sharks in the airlock, and since he's oh so nice, he turns on the Celtics game for all of them to watch. Meanwhile, on the copter ride to the Mohegan Sun, the pilot, who for some reason looks like a caricature of every old former 80s male porn star ever, starts making some moves on Julia, who politely declines his advances. When they finally get there, Julia successfully places the bet for the Celtics, but as she's approached by the pilot again, she notices Buddy poking around the casino floor. So she accepts his offer and follows him up to his suite. Back at the shop with Howard and the Loan Sharks, that's a pretty neat name for a ska band, we see them quote-unquote enjoying the game. Well, except for Phil, who is shown becoming slowly more belligerent as time goes on while Nico and Arno actually focus on the game. Speaking of the game, during a break in the locker room, KG uses the power of the black materia to finally summon the most powerful destruction magic known to man. Meteor. Just kidding, he uses it to win the game 85-73. In the excitement of finally having the money to pay back his debt, Howard releases Arno and co from the airlock and is completely caught off guard when Phil hits his boiling point, pulling a gun on Howard and pulling the trigger without a second thought.
Happy Gilmore fucking dies!
Head case.
Arno calls Phil out on this, and Phil just shoots him too, leaving he and Nico to loot the store while the camera zooms into Howard's face bullet wound. And the movie ends exactly how it began, with trippy visuals and a deliciously equally synthy track, showing us that deep inside, Howard Ratner truly was an uncut gem. The story's good, I like it. Relatively simple and to the point. Gem Merchant does crazy bullshit in an attempt to pay back his brother-in-law and get filthy fucking rich at the same time. Kept things going along pretty well, except for a few select scenes, and it kept me invested from beginning to end. I actually gave a shit about Howard and his get-rich scheme, but for the wrong reasons. Easy! Howard isn't necessarily the ideal protagonist. He lies and cheats to everyone he knows for personal gain. But the absolute shitstorm he gets himself into just so he can have his cake and eat it too? is enough for me to root for him. I love these kind of stories. Makes me think back to GTA San Andreas and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Also stories of not so moral people getting into crazy hijinks. Except they live to tell the tale. Most of the editing in this movie is, for lack of better words, too close for comfort. Almost if not all shots are focused on the characters' faces, with wide shots very few and far between. In fact, if the camera was any closer, we'd be seeing each individual pour on Davy's wooden mug. And in a few scenes, we fucking can. This can make a viewer feel a bit claustrophobic and anxious, but I think that was the point. I think it was the Safety Dance brothers' intention to make this movie amid a chaotic and stressful atmosphere. And credit where it's due, they get the results they were after. The editing certainly matches the story's pacing, which is like dynamite detonating in your ass at the speed of a masturbating coyote. But I can't give the same praise to the audio mixing. I don't know if it's the movie itself, or the projectionist was just hard of hearing the night I watched it, but holy goddamn, everything in this movie is loud. Like distractingly loud. So much so, I had trouble hearing what some of the characters were even saying, mainly because a lot of the time they're yelling over each other, trying to get their points heard. They don't even tone it down during crucial dialogue exchanges, meaning you really gotta pay attention and listen, otherwise you will be lost. There's not much to say about the acting, honestly. Everyone in this movie did a bang-up job with their roles. Unsurprisingly, Howard is my favorite from all of Sandler's roles from the past 30 years worth of acting. Hell, I don't even mind when he's yelling obnoxiously, because he's using it to portray actual strong emotions of frustration and anger, and not just because, you know, loud equal funny. I'm also kinda glad he yelled a bunch in this movie, because if he didn't, I most likely wouldn't have been able to hear him through the shitty audio balancing. Overall, Uncut Gems is stressful, it's chaotic, and it's fast-paced. But I still see it as a fun watch, mainly because that was the idea from the start. It's meant to give you anxiety, it's meant to be stressful. And if you don't like the sound of that, then, well, you're not gonna like this movie. That's gonna be it for my first ever review on this channel. I actually had a lot of fun working on it, even though it did take over 5 months to get it done, and I damn near lost everything from a system crash. And I think I'm gonna make more in the future, depending on how I'm feeling. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one, whenever that'll be.